I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right, all right, all right. Here we are. Welcome all my passionate plant people and garden enthusiasts here to the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today, and today is our final show of 2024, the final book club. It's the third Sunday of the month, so we are here for our monthly gardening book club. And in just a few minutes, we'll be joined with my good friend Mark Boucher Colbert, who will be joining us live for his In the Garden segment, and my good co-host for our book club just a little bit later on today. We've got for our book club, we've been talking about all month, we've got Diane Miessler, who wrote the book Grow Your Soil. This is such a great book. I've been really enjoying it this month and can't wait to talk to Diane just a little bit later all about her book here, How to Harness the Power of the Soil Food Web to Create Your Best Garden Ever. So it's going to be a really great conversation. Again, I said I really love this book, so I hope you all stick around here for that interview here just a little bit later on in the show. And right on. And if you are here joining with us right now, definitely be sure to click that like button, hit the thumbs up real quick there, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams. And of course, be sure to share with all your garden friends out there. I'm sure you got some garden groups, some people that you talk with and enjoy talking about gardening, and let them know all about our show, Let's Get Growing, here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, except for just a little caveat here for the next couple of weeks, because again, it's about the holidays time right now. We're going to take a little holiday break for the next couple of weeks here on the show. So, but what I also did too, I just want to let you all know, because I know a lot of you come here regularly and you love to have a conversation with each other. There are shows up for that. So that means our chat, that means the discussion, it will still be able to go. So you guys can come join in and say hi to each other. And maybe I'll even drop in over the next couple of weeks as well too, and join the conversation. I just won't be available to be live on the show. So definitely come and do that over the next couple of weeks. And then again, we'll be right back at it. This won't be like last year where we took a couple of months off during our winter break. We're going to get right back at it right after the New Year's. We've got a lot of great shows coming up for you for the 2025 growing season for sure. Right on. And a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on the replay. Thank you so much for taking your time to join with us here on the Let's Get Growing show. Really appreciate you. And definitely, if you are here joining us on the replay, get down below into the comment section and let me know that you are here. Let me know if you got any ideas, any suggestions for any of our book clubs, maybe that we could do going forward, some future guests, maybe that you might like to see on the show. I'd love to have people that you follow as well here on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely jump in that comment section down below and leave me any of your suggestions, questions, or comments, or even if you just want to say hi. I love to hear from all of you. So definitely do that. And if you are here with us live, especially during our interview segment later on, if you have a question or comment, and jump into the chat there and drop that in there. And if you do have any questions, all I do ask is that you put them in nice big bold capital letters so that I can tell the questions from the regular conversation going on in the chat. So that'll be great. Also, we've got links down below to all of our guests and all of our other things growing on for the Urban Gardener channel and the Let's Get Growing show. So to go check out some of those links down below for sure, and go check them out. And especially the links that we've got for our guests, go and say hi to them over on their channels or their social media and let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. Right on, right on. We've been having such a great time, not just this last couple of weeks, but this whole year. This has just been such a wonderful year for the Let's Get Growing show. We've had so many awesome guests throughout the year during our Saturday and Sunday shows. If you didn't get a chance though, too, to check out our last not yes well yesterday we had kind of a year in review show. We did a special edition. I hung out with all of you. We had Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop on the show. We had Charles Malky, our sponsor from Ivy Organics, with us, talking a little bit about tree care and the Ivy Organics product that they have there. And also we were joined by our good friend Jay Dixon, our facilitator, in the chat there too at the end of the show, so you might want to check that out. But last week on the show, though, too, for our last Saturday show, we had Tony O'Neill with us. If you didn't get a chance to check out that interview, you'll definitely want to go back and check that out. Tony O'Neill from Simplify Gardening. Tony was also featured here on our monthly gardening book club earlier on in the year, and it was great to get him back on the show and talk all about what he's had growing on this year. We also got to meet Michael Overstreet from the Garden Nerd on the last Saturday's show as well too. It was a really great conversation. Michael gardens out of Arizona, and yeah, it was just really fun to talk to them. I really enjoy these "Are You Following Me" segments that we do, where we get to talk to smaller channels and Instagrammers and all of that as well too. So again, go back and check out last Saturday's show if you didn't. And then of course, here we are on the Sunday edition of the show. If you didn't get a chance to check out last Sunday's show, you can go back and check that out. We finally got back on the show. Our good friend Gardener Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel joined with us last week to answer all of your gardening questions. It was really great to get Scott back on the show and have a great conversation with him and catch up with how things have been growing on in his garden there over the last year as well too. So we've got lots and lots of great things growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show. A little bit later on the show, I'll let you know a little bit about what our guests that we'll have here coming back in 2025 as we get started up here in just a few weeks. I'm really excited about this new year. This year's just been such a, like I said, for our show, it's been such a really great year for us, and also in the garden we did pretty well this year. So looking forward to being able to talk with all of you about your gardens and all of the things that we've got growing on here as we move into 2025. Again, thank you all so much for joining with us here too. Let's catch up with who we got joining with us in the chat right now today. Of course, I just mentioned she was on with us yesterday on the show. Towards the end of the show, we had our good friend and facilitator of the show, Jay Dixon, joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you, Jay, so much for all that you do for our show, and thank you for being here. And right on. And we got Adam Burley as well, my good friend from right down the road here in Central Oregon, Southern Oregon. Thank you, Adam, for joining with us here today. Let's see. Earlier on, we got a comment from Janet McDonald joining in with us. Said yesterday was great. The real Jay Dixon. I know for sure. It's great. We've been able to have Jay on a couple of times this year. It's always great to kind of chat with her. And then, for most of you who get to just, have a conversation with her through our chat, through most all of our shows, it's always good to kind of get a chance every now and then to have her on so you can see her in person and be able to, kind of put a face to all of the conversations that you're having. So yeah, it was really great. Excellent. And let's see here, Bowtie Life David, who actually I played his version of the Grinch that Stole Christmas. He did a garden version of that song, and we played that to finish up the show yesterday. That was really great. I think he did such a really wonderful job on that. And he says that I'm listening in, but am arm deep in you know what. And he's got loofahs. And if you see that clip that we played yesterday, he was showing, just tons and tons of these loofahs that he's been harvesting off of these plants that he's got. Just amazing. So thank you, David, for joining with us here today. It's great to see you. And of course, we got Jersey Girl joining in with us. Thank you for being here. We got, like I said, we got a really, really great show for you here today. Oh, and I see we do got Tony. Tony, thank you for joining in. It's great to see you. Tony from Simplify Gardening. in the conversation with everybody there. Thanks for jumping in with us. It's great to see you here. Dusty Flats. Hey, 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 good to see you. Thank you so much, everybody, for again taking your time to be here with us each and every weekend. Like I said, this has just been such a really awesome year for us here in the Let's Get Growing show. The conversations have just been getting better and better every week, and that's all because of you out there who take your time each weekend to come and join with us here. So again, I really want to thank you all for all that you do in supporting our show and channel. So again, right on. We got lots and lots of great things going on today. You know, this is the third Sunday of the month, and usually on Sundays we've got our good friend Mark Lachey Colbert doing our In the Garden segment for us. But on the third Sunday of the month, he comes here to help co-host our monthly gardening book club. So that means that we get to have him here live with us to talk in the garden. All right, all right, all right. There he is, Mr. Mark Lachey Colbert. Great to see you, man. Great to have you back. Here we are, final show of 2024, our final book club, and the final In the Garden segment for our 2024 growing season. How are you doing this week?
Oh yeah, good, Enoch. I mean, things are going well. You know, we were just commenting before before we got on here that
Yeah.
it has been that cold. There's still been a lot of opportunity to do a bunch of things in the garden.
Yeah.
I have some lettuce in a cloche that is not frozen out. You know, it's amazing. It's been pretty mild, really. Just a little bit of protection has kept things going. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I was also mentioning to you, we've only had a couple of moments, but it finally started dipping into some freezing territory for us a couple of times. But as I was looking at the forecast as we're moving forward, we're still looking at a pretty warm winter for us. So that's going to be something.
Yeah, so far you never know. You know, January, February, we just don't know what those months are going to hold. But so far we're riding pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, the thing I wanted to get into today, though, is I'm really like the indoor gardening is really big right now for me. I'm really going great, producing all kinds of stuff in my grow space, which I activate the grow space to grow all my starts in the spring,
Yep.
and actually really pretty soon. I mean, I'll probably start planting in late January stuff for the gardens, but. Couple of years ago, you know, I was kind of getting ready to shut it down in October or September or October after I'd finished growing all my starts for the season. And then I just realized, well, why don't I just keep growing baby stuff? You know, why don't I just grow baby lettuces and I could just be harvesting all that? And it's been working great. I mean, I have been just getting tons. I've been growing little gem romaine lettuce that has just been tasty and delicious. I'm a super big fan of this dwarf gray sugar pea that I get from Johnny's. And I mean, I just make entire salads out of that, like just a big pile of that with a little balsamic vinegar dressing on it. And it's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cilantro, basil right now. I took some tarragon in and I divided it. And then I'm continuing to grow that. And it's just like, and this year I went crazy on some other plants too. Like I had pity on all these coleus. So I brought all those guys in. Somebody on steras and I've like divided those. So my grow room is packed with like stuff that I'm eating and then all this other stuff that I just like divided and just it does really well with the light. You know, the light. It's really so it's just a great space to be taking advantage of. And for me, it's you know, I know that some people I think we all suffer from some degree of seasonal affective disorder, right? Especially in the Pacific Northwest, because we don't get a lot of sun. And to have a grow space that is brightly lit with full spectrum lights, to me, it's a healing place. Like I really want to go there every day, even for a few minutes, just to spend some time with the plants and the light. So it's really doing it for me on a lot of levels.
Yeah. And again, too, like you're saying, it's it's always great to kind of have that kind of space inside, during this time of year. It kind of keeps our gardening and, going and moving throughout this time of year when we don't have much we can do outdoors in our outdoor gardening spaces. I've got my light station. I've just been kind of gearing it up, getting everything ready to go, and getting some, digging out my seeds and everything, and getting all my microgreens and all of that started up. And yeah, and then again too, like you said, we kind of grow and do that, get those microgreens, so we have that, additional food we can produce inside our house. And then as we move more towards well, I'll probably get started actually here in just a couple of weeks with my peppers.
Yeah.
So I get my peppers started real early, so I'll start those up, and so it's always great. I always recommend people have a nice cool little light station or something like that they can set up indoors during this time of year, especially.
The other thing that I'll touch on too, that relates to that, and I think we'll sort of lead into our book discussion today, is I've been using my own compost this year, and I've always used it to a certain degree, but this year I'm making more of an effort to get out there, and I've got these. I'll probably do a video on it because it's easier to show than tell.
Yeah.
But I've got this series of basically like tough. What is that? Rubbermaid tough can or something like that. They're
Right.
the 33 to 44 gallon, bins, and with a lid. And I got them set up to keep the rats out and such. But I just compost right in there. And then I take the stuff out when it's finished. I sift it, throw the unsifted stuff back in the next compost bin to keep breaking down. And then I bring great sifted compost. And really, it's like completing some nutrient loops, and just that's what's growing my lettuce. So that feels really satisfying too.
Yeah, that's really great. I've got a similar type of bin set up for myself out there as well too. So again, that's something that we're going to be digging a lot into here just a little bit later on as we move on with our conversation with Diane, is talking all about the importance of composting and doing that sort of thing in order to really improve the soil in your garden.
Soil and the soul, your own soul, it's like, these are like spiritual practices. It's like when you're out at the compost pile, you're just like in touch with this basic rhythm of life, this circular rhythm, and you're participating in it. So to me, it's both. It really you're doing some soil improvement, but you're also doing some soul improvement.
Yeah. And another thing too, though, is that this is something that you can do and really kind of amendments and things that you can really do yourself, and versus having to go out somewhere and get something, not just compost. One of my big things I've gotten into over the last couple of years now is growing my own worms.
Yeah.
And getting my own, worm castings and that sort of thing as well too, which is just really did wonders for the garden this last year. Making some of these worm teas and things that I got to use. And again, that's free fertilizer basically. Other than the initial investment in the worms and the setup. After that, it's just this kind of continuous, supply of this just amazing food for your garden.
I know, it's kind of like like a sourdough starter or something like that. All you need is
Right.
just once, just do it at the beginning, and then it self perpetuates as long as you just do this teeny little bit of maintenance. It doesn't even take very much. So these are all really exciting things. I mean, they're empowering, and you can feel the empowerment. I mean, you feel like, hey, I produce some of this stuff for myself. I don't have to rely on external sources, and I can take things that other people are mostly wasting, it's vegetable scraps and things. I can set this up so that then I complete cycles, even if it's on a patio or back porch or the smallest little space in your basement, whatever. You can set up a space and claim it for that. You can do it neat and tidy, and without a lot of, you're not getting a lot of odors if you do it correctly. So it's doable.
Yeah. I've got a nice setup here right indoors for all of that. And again, too many folks might know that you also garden and teach over at the Montessori school there in Portland as well too. You're teaching kids all about this sort of stuff. Do you guys have a worm bin out there? Do you guys?
Yeah. Of course, we got lots of
You
stuff.
know, the kids have got to love that, right?
Oh yeah, I know, and yeah, I mean the worms are great. The other thing that I really love that moves into the compost pile in around midsummer and then stays till like November, December are the black soldier flies.
Yeah.
We'll talk about those too, but those things, they gross the kids out because they're giant maggots, but things like they just chow through whatever you throw at them. They're gonna make it disappear in a day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Black soldier flies. That was a kind of a learning experience for me early on in my gardening. I moved here to Southern Oregon, and it just happened to be like that first season that I was growing that I don't know what it was or why, but man, I got the side of my house
Mm,
and I mean, there were probably hundreds of these things just
whoa!
right on the side of my house flying around, and
Oh god!
I had no clue what they were at that point in time, and I'm like, what are these things? And they're
Yeah,
really good size flies too,
yeah.
and they don't know what they're doing when they're flying around either, so it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then it was really great to learn that they were actually really beneficial to what we were doing too. So, that's one of the things about, bugs and things like that, is getting to learn what they can, what they do for our gardens. And soldier
Mm,
flies are like one of those big ones.
totally. Yeah. So either working with the kids or even just at home myself, these things are. I find all this stuff fascinating. I just love meditating on it, watching it, spending time out. I love getting out in the compost. It's really how I got into gardening. I was a composter first before I became a gardener. So it's
Yeah.
always my true love.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a really great way to start and a great way to get in is already, right from that. It's like I said, for me, it's kind of, I was one of those initial gardeners who literally was, just kind of grabbing information wherever, I was buying fertilizers, I was buying all this sort of stuff, trying to do all of that. And I think that was one of the best parts, of learning over the years in my gardening space was finding out how much I don't need a lot of that stuff in my garden. I can really create a good regenerative situation in my garden and sustainable, things going on into my garden from, composting, like we're talking
Yep.
about the worms, those sort of things that, really, really in the long run, it makes things a lot easier, more simple to understand in the garden than what all of this other stuff gives us when we're thinking about what do we need to actually grow a garden.
Well, you start all of a sudden, and I think this will really come out in today's book discussion, but you have this sense that you're surrounded by this community of allies, all these
Yeah.
plants, these insects, these microbes, these are all allies, and they're mainly doing all the work. They're doing all the hard work. Like in school, for example, we rake all our leaves. We have a pretty substantial ground, so we rake all our leaves. And I tell the kids, you know, um, the trees have mined all these nutrients for us. It would be what a loss it would be to send them off the property. We can't afford that. We have to take advantage of this gift. And so then we just compost all our leaves, and that becomes part of our garden compost. So this is like you have to look around and see what the other organisms are doing in the ecosystem and how that's beneficial to us as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it kind of comes back to that is like, again, creates this new fascination for the garden. Now, not just, are we growing plants or food or whatever it is, that sort of thing. It's all of this life, it's nature that we're bringing into our space and getting to understand it just a little bit better.
Hmm. Yes, truly spoken.
And all these great natural systems too, that we're learning as we growing along.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Western society has gone off course. We're so linear. It's like start at point A, put in these inputs, end up at point B or wherever. But we're getting back to the circles. The circularity is like that's what's going on. We that's how you keep it sustainable, right? Garden in circles, not in lines.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, right on, Mark, man. Just again, the final show of 2024, and again, just to say it's just been really an awesome journey along this year with you and getting to do this book club for one, but in general, you know, just what we get to do together here on the Let's Get Growing show. It's just been really awesome. I think, you know, this is, you know, a great year for us, but then again, we do have a great new year to look forward to.
Oh God, I know, right?
More to do, you know, right?
And that's a great position to be in when we can say, man, this was a great year. 2024 was awesome. We did so much great garden learning and great conversations with people between us and other people, the authors. But then it's just like, oh, but wait till 2025. I love that feeling of just feeling like it's going to be even better.
Yeah, exactly. I always, and I brought this up yesterday too. I bring it up quite often as well too, is that I'm a huge baseball fan. So, you know what I mean? It doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really matter how the season goes. It could go good, go, you know, go poorly, whatever, you know, but, you know, always at the end of the season, you know, you got that saying, there's always next year.
Yep.
And that's where we're at. Next year is just right around the corner. We're gonna be right at it again, you know, just digging into these garden spaces and growing and learning even more.
Yeah. And I know we're starting to line up some good books for next year and just new thoughts. We got the flower and garden show that we're looking forward to up in Seattle. We'll both be up at that, and that's gonna I'm like kid in the candy shop with that.
I know, I can't wait. Yeah, I was actually looking at the lineup for the flower and garden show too, of a lot of the speakers and people, and you know, there was, I think, at least a half dozen folks that are going to be there either speaking or doing something that we've actually had right here on the Let's Get Growing show. So that's just going to be really amazing to kind of go and see some of these people in person and get a chance to talk with them and all of that as well too. I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, we'll make some videos and get some content for everybody as well too from the show. So I'm really looking forward to that in this new year. All sorts of stuff. Like you said, we got some new books and everything that we're going to be lining up, and more authors to discuss all of these just great gardening topics throughout the 2025 season. So I hope everybody who's watching has subscribed and you've hit that bell notification so that you can be notified of all of these great shows that we're going to have coming up in 2025 right here with you, my good friend Mark Roche Colbert. And again, thanks so much for all that you do for the show. And we're going to be right back here in just a moment, and we'll get started with this book club. How's that sound?
It's truly my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible feature visits. All right. Welcome back to the Let's Get Growing show, everybody. We got a really great book for you all today. We're going to be talking with Diane Miessler here in just a moment about her book, Grow Your Soil. So if you do, like I said, if you do have any questions at all, definitely jump into our chat right now and get those questions in too. And we'll try to get those in and ask Diane as we're talking with her in just a little bit here. And again, like I said, make sure those questions are all in nice big bold capital letters so I can see them from the regular conversation. And yeah, I can't wait to get into this here. So let's get started. We got our final gardening book club of 2024. All right. Let's welcome back here our friend Mark Moshe Colbert. Right on, right on. Oh, whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself there. Right on. So we got our book, Grow Your Soil from Diane Miessler. Right on, right on.
Great book. I mean, this is so you can just tell from the cover. Look at how fun that cover is. I mean, it's kind of got cartoony style pictures, and you just kind of
Yeah,
like it just says approachable, like
that's
you
right.
approachable.
Yeah. And I was kind of talking to you before we started the show and everything. I'm one of those types of learners. That I mean, I love books and I love reading books and all that sort of stuff. But it's these types of books that I think I get the most from. It's
Mm,
very illustrative. It's got lots of illustrations. It's lists and really segmented ideas and things like that that you can
yeah.
really kind of take piece by piece as you're reading along, versus trying to read a book that's just straight text.
Oh man, we've all read. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole host of great textbooks out there, but man, what a mind number, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
this kind of chunky way is just a little bit better. I think it's like little bits and pieces. You got little sidebars. You got little special, differently colored page. Oh, just like look at this. See,
Yeah.
broken up. It's like okay, I'm going to focus. I can sort of I can deal with this. It's small. I just kind of get that,
Mhm.
and then it's like, lot, nice amount of. You see the white space. Like there's a certain balance between the amount of stuff that's being hurled at you, and then just a little eye rest. So it really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's well done.
Yeah, and,
Fine.
Diane's just a really great writer too, though. I love the humor
Oh
that
yeah.
you get throughout the book. I mean, there's so many little funny little quips going on throughout the book and everything too, so it just really, really kind of, takes you along by bringing you through, like I said, through something that's very illustrative, and the humor involved as well too, just really helps you kinda catch on to some of those ideas she's talking about.
Yeah, I had read this book back in I think it was 2022, and I had liked it so much I did a little review of it on my Instagram, and that's kind of what brought it to our attention.
Yeah.
But having gone through it a second time, I'm even more of a fan. I mean, it's like some of these books, if they can stand up under repeated readings, it's just like you got a good book, right? It's like this is
Mhm.
just as much out of it this time or more as I did last time. So that's awesome.
Right on, right on. Well, let's get to it. We got Diane here waiting for us in the
Oh yeah.
studio. Let's bring her in so that we can talk about this great book. Right on, right on. Let's see, Diane. There we are. Diane Miessler. Thanks for joining with us here today on the Let's Get Growing show to talk all about this really wonderful book that you wrote here, Grow Your Soil.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for your wonderful remarks on my book.
Oh
It
yeah.
was
Yeah,
fun to write. Yeah.
Great and engaging. So you've done something good. You've done us all a service here in making this thing.
Oh, thank you.
yeah. All right. Well, let's see here. Let's give you just a minute to kind of introduce yourself to everybody there. And you can also tell us a little bit how you got started on this path of gardening, and then regenerative gardening as well, too.
Sure. Um, I'm a nurse by trade. I've been a nurse for 50 years,
Hmm.
mostly retired. I work 2 days a month now.
Oh,
But I got into gardening with my dad. He was a great dad. My mom was difficult, but my dad made up for it.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think my daughter would say the same, too.
yeah. Watch it. Careful there.
I know, right?
Um, but the first thing I remembered, I remember my dad working in the garden and whistling while he mowed the lawn and stuff. But
Hmm.
we started sweet pea seeds and orange juice concentrate cans, and it was just amazing to me to watch these sturdy shoots come up and then grow into these amazing fragrant flowers. And it just seemed like magic to me, and it still does.
Yeah,
That seeds know when to sprout, when to drop,
yeah.
which way to turn toward the light. And yeah, it's still,
Just a real youthful fascination then, right?
yeah. And I still have that fascination. I don't think we can explain it.
Yeah.
It's like, where do babies come from? We know the mechanics, but not
Yeah.
where do they come from. Um,
Right.
And I gardened with my dad. He was, 50s carpet bombing weed and stuff, and very manicured, no mulch, no, bare dirt was what looked tidy.
Right.
Mm.
And then my first job working at the Cal State Library, where I sat at the turnstile, looked at books people had brought back. I read Ruth Stout's book, No Work Gardening, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's a hell of a lot easier than what a lot of people do.
Mm.
And we just put down a real thick mulch of straw and let nature do what it does, which is inhabit the soil with a lot of organisms, microbes and worms and bugs that all make it healthier.
Yeah.
So I did that for a lot of years, and maybe 10 years ago, I came across the book Teeming with Microbes by
Lowenfels there, Jeff Lowenfels.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the other guy, I forgot his name, but it's a great book. And learned a lot from that, and became more amazed by the magic of what happens in soil, and how plants attract what they need if you have a lot of life in the soil.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of write about that in a more conversational form, I guess.
Mm.
So I really recommend that book too. It inspired me to write mine.
Yeah.
You talk about, or Elaine Ingham wrote the introduction to your book, and it certainly seems like you two are simpatico in terms of your viewpoints. Were you influenced by her work as well, much, or did kind of she come in after and sort of rubber stamp what you had written and inspired by Lowenfels stuff?
Lowenfels introduced me to her in that book, and so then I started watching some things by her. I haven't met her, but when I was finishing this book, I emailed her, and she's a delightful person. She's very gracious and unassuming. Excuse me, getting over something. And she wrote back, sure. She also said somebody had asked her to write a book, and she didn't have it in her. And that particular publisher didn't use mine, but so I thought maybe this was going to be an expensive hobby like writing is for so many people, and I'd self-publish. But I went to a bookstore looking for people to do looking for layouts I liked, and wrote to someone at Story Publishing who had done the layout on a book on tomatoes, and she said she only worked for her publisher, but she sent them a chapter and they bought it. So
wow,
it was a happy surprise.
Yeah, because who do Enoch remind me of the author of Garden Variety? There, didn't she say she shipped it out to 82?
Right, Christy Wilhelmi for Garden Variety. Yeah.
She had to submit like 70 times before she finally got connected, and then you hit it on number one. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mailed it to one other person with a very decorated envelope. Didn't hear back.
Right on. So you kind of talked there about the layout and all of that, and we kind of touched on that just a little bit, as we were kind of introducing the book there too, is, and we kind of talked about that is, kind of how it's set up like that, it's nice bits and pieces. You got lists. It's just full of, just kind of illustrations and things like that too, which I was saying is, really helpful for readers like me, how I can absorb a lot of information a lot easier that way than just straight text. Is a lot of that really intentional?
That was my vision for it. Yeah, it's kind of similar to a magazine where there are different things you can look at and on your own in your own time. But they did a great job. They just took it and ran with it and did better than I could have expected.
Yeah, I mean even the cover is like,
yeah, I love it.
A great summary of the whole book. I mean, even this one little There's one
Yeah.
little blurb here. There's a worm that's saying, "Let us do the work while you take a nap." I mean, it really, that does kind of summarize the whole book. It's like you're not fighting against the system. You're letting the system work for you, and it makes it easier,
Yeah, so much easier.
right?
Yeah, I'm an avid napper, so
That-
that's just what I preach.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
so the illustrations do a lot of do some heavy lifting. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Now, you from the back, we learned too that you do writing. You're a permaculture designer, and you write a column. Is it about permaculture? Is it about garden issues in general? What do you understand?
It's mostly about gardening. Well, I write a lot of stuff. I just go on diatribes about whatever has crossed my mind. But I have written quite a bit about permaculture and what to do when your yard's covered with leaves, and how to start a garden from scratch for new gardeners. So yeah, about a lot of things, same things I talk about in the book.
How would you? Permaculture is one of those terms everyone seems like to throw around, and so how do you describe it? I mean, I would say this book is a permaculture book, but how would you describe what permaculture is for people who might not know?
Several things. It's regenerative. It improves the soil. It makes the soil more fertile rather than needing to add fertilizer to it. It uses what's available. I mostly use what's in my yard or what I beg from wood chip companies or gardeners who have a lot of leaves in their truck. And I mulch with whatever I have. I do have a compost pile, but that's mostly for kitchen stuff. But in the garden, anything I prune, I cut up and scatter around, and it looks presentable, kind of like wood chips.
Right on, right on. One of the things too throughout the book that it's really, you kind of reference building your soil, growing your soil as like building a house. Could you talk to that just a little bit more?
Yeah. I would have to look at my book to remember all the chapters, but the way they asked me to arrange it, which was cool, is as though you're building a house from the top down. So let me grab my book. I'll be right back. It's right here.
Right on. Yeah. So throughout the book, there's several different parts and that she does reference, it's to being like building a house, which I thought was a really kind of great concept for relaying this sort of information about growing your soil.
Yeah. So building a house starting with the roof, which is mulch and cover crops. I don't even ever having bare dirt showing, which is another concept of permaculture. You either have something growing on it, or cover crops, mulch, or compost. It's good to compost with mulch. Build the walls, which is organic matter that gives soil its structure and gives a place for beneficial organism to live. Install ventilation, which is plumbing and a nice pantry. So making paths so you're not compacting your soil. Increasing CEC, which is a term for storage capacity of soil, basically for nutrients. Feed the inhabitants with photosynthesis, minerals, and soil testing if you feel like you need it. I think if your plants seem pretty healthy, you probably don't need to do soil testing. But my soil was dreadful. It was graded, and it was a place where they dumped asphalt. So, yeah. And then compost. I talk about compost and compost tea, another way to feed the inhabitants. So giving soil structure, giving it a shelter with a roof and the structure within the soil, and then making sure it's fed with stuff that's available.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to take off from that and say that, you know, so that's kind of the master metaphor of the book, right? The whole housing metaphor. But one of the things I find impressive about your writing and your ability to approach the subject is it is shot through with metaphor. It's all kinds of stuff, and that makes it very relatable. Like, I'm gonna pull up some of my favorites here and read a few. So besides this whole metaphor about, you know, the roof, the walls, the ventilation, and each one of those has a correspondence with something in soil science. So then it, you know, makes it viable. Here's one about chemical fertilizers also renders soil organisms that feed plants obsolete. The fertilizers do the job in a quick and soulless way, kind of like self-checkout aisles at the grocery store. So, you know, all of a sudden we have something very relatable to our life. It's like, yeah, right. We miss those interaction with the cashiers. Here's like rototilled rows are cemeteries for mycorrhizae. All of a sudden we're like in a cemetery. Then there's a speed dating site where soil carbon molecules meet atmospheric oxygen molecules, the effect of tilling and releasing carbon dioxide. So, I mean, page after page, there's metaphor through this. Do these things just jump to your mind? Do you work hard at trying to figure out, like, how do I make this concept relatable? Because I think that's one of the more delightful parts of this book, and really actually is very helpful in terms of explaining these concepts.
Oh, thank you. I don't work hard at writing, really. I worked hard at researching this book to get it right, but I write. I don't know. I have a quirky brain that thinks in terms of metaphors, I guess, and sees kind of patterns that not everybody sees. Yeah, so writing it was easy, but then I had to organize it and rewrite it and edit it. So it took about 5 years, I'd say.
Oh my God! Wow, 5 years.
From a twinkle in my eye to a finished product for the publisher.
Well, you do have another job too. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not quitting my day job.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Wow, amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So again, let's dig into it here too, because again, you know, we're talking about building a house there, and you mentioned starting with the roof, you know, and that's talking about mulch and cover crops and all of that too. You know, one of the things also is a big theme throughout the book is no till, you know, and not tilling and that sort of stuff. So maybe you could talk about just a little bit more about that there, the importance of mulch and cover crops, and not tilling your soil to really establish a good base for your garden.
Sure.
Or roof, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, basically it's sheltering what lives in the soil, because there is so much, billions of organisms in a cubic foot of soil.
Yeah.
Maybe more, trillions. And none of those things like to be dry or baked by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what nature does. If there's bare soil, it fills it up. And everything on top of the soil feeds it. Mulch breaks down and turns into compost, and plant roots in the soil also compost and feed it. And tilling it breaks up a lot of that stuff. It kills some of it. It kills what's exposed to sun and heat, and it also chops up mycorrhizae, which are amazing things. That they're like hair extensions. One of my metaphors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That let roots reach much farther, multiple times farther than they would normally, and they bring nutrients and moisture to the plant from farther away than its roots could reach. And whenever you rototill or turn the soil too much by hand, it breaks those up and they have to start over. Otherwise, they live in the soil. There's a variety, and they adapt. Whatever the plant you put in there needs attracts the mycorrhizae that it needs. There was a thing I talk about in my book where they planted the U.S. in its wisdom decided to create a wood plantation in Puerto Rico and brought some pine trees there, and they all died. They tried fertilizer, they tried different stuff, and they finally brought some of the soil that they had lived in here, and they flourished after that because they and that mycorrhiza had evolved together. So that's a big reason. That's probably my biggest reason for not rototilling. But it also chops up worms. It exposes everything to weathering, which isn't good for it. It's not the natural habitat for soil organisms.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say are some? So also we talk a little bit about cover crops there as well too. So what are some of the importance of maybe putting in some cover crops into your garden, and also maybe what are some of your favorite ones?
They shelter the soil, and living cover on soil is a little better than mulch. Mulch is certainly good, but living plants in the soil attract more life and support more life. That's the magic of photosynthesis. It's kind of a deal that plants have with the organisms they need, is that it makes sugar out of sun and water. I'm forgetting right now. Yeah, air and water.
Yeah.
And turns that into sugar and carbon. And that's what attracts the organisms that it needs. So, and that plant knows what the pH is, and the organisms in the soil know how to make that to buffer the pH to the right level for the plant. And then everything that grows in the soil leaves behind root remnants and things that continue to feed things in the soil and put more carbon into the soil. And I like buckwheat. It grows most of the year here. You can just throw it around and it comes up. I like sweet potatoes because they're beautiful and you can eat the leaves and the root.
I've never tried a sweet potato leaf, and I'm gonna do it next year.
Yeah, and they're beautiful. They're ornamental. They put them in flowering baskets. Peaceful Valley is an amazing store that is in town where I live in Grass Valley, Nevada City. And they sell some cool mixes. I recently put in legume mix because my soil was low in nitrogen and still can use more. So legumes are amazing. They get little pink nodules you can see on the roots, which when you pull them up, and those are nitrogen that is pulled into the air and made into little nubs on the roots, and that then feeds the soil. What are my other cover crops?
You mentioned nasturtiums in the book.
Oh yeah, I like things that are pretty.
Yeah.
I often jumble everything together. I've got nasturtiums planted among vegetables or as borders to my vegetable spots.
Now, while we're on the edible cover crops, I have not eaten. You mentioned alyssum and California poppy. How do you? What parts of those are those? Those are in your edible section. Have you eaten those?
No, I think that's a mistake.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, you can't eat poppy petals. You can put those in salads. They're pretty. And nasturtiums.
Yeah. Okay. And are some flowers edible too? I haven't. Again, like I haven't.
I haven't. I don't know that to be true, so I'm not
Okay.
going to say
Right.
that.
Well, that could be a next edition of redaction. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, talk to my editor.
Mhm.
You know, so through your book, and this is kind of, you've alluded to it. I think there's a big shift. I mean, at least I can feel it happening in my mind as a gardener, that you're not responsible for everything anymore. It's like or it's a different role. I mean, I think as you start to partner more and have a more partnership idea, it's almost like you're a facilitator, and the plants and the microbes themselves, they're the ones that are responsible for this whole thing. Like the plant is organizing, even to know that it's organizing its own pH,
Yeah.
is because usually as gardeners, like, well, you do the soil test and you add this much lime or gypsum or whatever. It's
Right.
all about us. Usually it's about us having to correct the system. But here, what you're trying to put forth is it's a self-correcting system,
Yeah.
and we just need to get it launched properly if it's not in a proper state already, and then sort of, like you say, putter and do the little tweaks, but nothing huge.
Right. Yeah. Our job is to nurture it, to shelter the soil, shelter what lives in it. And the more that's living in it, the more fertile it is, the more resistant it is to disease because there's diversity. One of my metaphors was a bad neighborhood where nothing's living, nobody's living because you killed everything, and then just the bad guys come back, the weeds.
Yeah.
But if it's full of life and a variety of life, then it's safer, and the bad guys aren't going to take over.
Jane Jacobs' urban planning argument, she always used to say that in the places where there's a lot of surveillance and human activity, that bad stuff's not going to happen. So it's very
Yeah.
good in urban planning and gardening.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so again, as Mark's kind of touched on there too, is, with, the soil or we're adding compost, we're doing these sort of things, basically organic matter and all of that into our soil, helping to promote this kind of society that's going on inside of our soil between all these different organisms and all of that. I think one of the see some things that you listed in here too is like what's living in my backyard, and just a teaspoon of healthy soil would contain more microbes than there are people in the United States.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More species than all of the vertebrates on Earth. Several yards of fungal filaments, several thousand protozoa, several dozen nematodes. You know what I mean? All of these things combined are, like this kind of, like I said, this kind of like society in our soil that's kind of, in a way self-governing and
Yeah,
doing,
exactly.
and
They know how to get along.
and that, yeah, they know what to do, this sort of thing, and create that balance that I think in the long run, what we do as humans are constantly kind of throwing it into imbalance, and it's really
Right.
something we need to back off from, and kind of
Bulldozing the neighborhood, right?
yeah, right. Kind of touching back on tilling again a little bit, or maybe even adding some of these other things, some inorganic fertilizers, pesticides by all means, let's not do that. But, it's these sort of things we're getting in the way of this society that's going on in our soil, when all we really need to do is just kind of nurture it and, kind of give it a few things so it
Yeah,
can do its own thing.
exactly. I remembered a couple cover crops that I like. Oilseed radish,
Oh yeah.
which makes, big carrot-sized roots if it's happy. Makes passageways in the soil, breaks it up. And I also like fava beans because they're edible and they grow really easily.
I'm really.
Yeah. Yeah, so not messing with the soil, not rototilling, not bulldozing the neighborhood. And a lot of people who are accustomed to tilling don't know how to start.
Yeah.
how do you plant in a bunch of mulch? And it's pretty simple. I lay it out in the book. You can start, if you're like, this time of year is a great time. Pull up whatever's in your yard that was growing. Chop it up with a machete. I love that because it's badass.
There you go.
And scatter it around, because you want things mixed up. You want a variety of things in each chunk of soil. Mulch over that heavily. I like alfalfa hay because it has a lot of nematodes and nitrogen, and it doesn't have a lot of seeds. So if I'm starting a new patch, I put alfalfa down first pretty thickly, 4 or 6 inches, and straw over that. And they both break down over a couple seasons. If you want to plant before that has done its magic and the soil's loosened up underneath or composted, you can, if it's seeds, you can spread that aside, chop it a little bit. I have a Ken hoe, it's called. It's a little triangular hoe that is my favorite tool. And I chop the area I'm going to plant, sprinkle in some seeds, or chop a bigger hole and put in a seedling. And then, leave a little space around it in the mulch. I'm reading.
Oh.
You can turn it to our cover crop now. I like that.
Yeah.
You do have to. Snails are a problem with mulching, so I use iron phosphate. It's organic snail bait, and I use that anytime I plant something tender, new seedlings. So you can kind of do it as you go, increase that as you go. One concept of permaculture is intermittent patchy disturbances in the soil. So when you plant something, that's enough tilling of the soil that breaks it up in that spot, that adds organic matter. Chop in a little bit of compost. And then the longer you do this, the more soft your soil becomes that you've been gardening in, and wormy and full of organic matter.
So I'd like to hear a little more about how the book has been received, because this book is, you put it on 20, right? I know we had a pandemic in there, but are you talking to groups? Because there's some really, if we all did these practices, we'd have a whole different agricultural system. We'd have a whole different gardening community. So who's been wanting to hear about this? Who have you been hearing from? And, who do you really want to talk to? Like, who needs to hear this?
I actually spoke at the Seattle conference the year it came out, or the next year, I guess. It came out in February. And it's been well received. The publisher did a great job. It's been published in French, and then a permaculture group in Poland asked if they could publish it.
Oh, cool.
So I have a whole group of followers there, and they had a good translator who made it funny, they said. And we have a group called Garden Goddesses here that I've spoken to some. It's kind of, I'm not working very hard at promoting it.
I'm like, its own life.
What's that?
It's kind of living its own life.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It came out before the pandemic, so I didn't do any tour.
Yeah.
Or I was supposed to do a book signing, and that was canceled. I'm going to do a book signing at Peaceful Valley, actually, and talk about compost tea and cover crops next month. But I have a website, and I hear from people still that love it and ask me questions, and it's really sweet to hear from readers. Yeah, so I guess my intended audience is everybody, but I don't know how to reach everybody. But it seems to be spreading by word of mouth, and people give it as a gift to people. Yeah, it sold, I don't know, 10,000 copies, I think. So I'm,
Nice.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
encouraging.
yeah,
Yeah, well, we got a couple of those copies right here.
yeah.
We're two
Good
out of
work.
you know, I'd like to. I want to use some of this with my students, and uh, to a certain degree, I already have, but in a more focused and intentional way. And I know one thing I've done with them, and we're going to do again here before the end of the year, is make some biochar, and we could talk a little bit about that because that is really fun. Funny story from the last time I made biochar with my students. We dug these pits because I didn't have, the elaborate barrel thing. And like, let's just do the pit method. We made our fire. That was awesome. When we poured water all over it, immense clouds of white steam came billowing up, as would be expected. But a neighbor saw it and called the fire department. So fire engine came by. Go explain to the fire guys like what I was doing, and then it was all under control. There was no fire here. It was just steam clouds. It was like, oh my god, how so
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
I with a different strategy for the next round here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I do for biochar is that we have a burn pile. Don't tell the county. We're very safe when it's raining. But we stack it like an upside down campfire. Put the small stuff on top. So put bigger branches on the bottom and progressively smaller, and then light the top, and it burns down, and therefore there's very little smoke.
Mhm.
We do it when it's already raining, so we don't start fires. And then it gradually burns down, and when the coals, the big stuff on the bottom is, thank you, firefighter. Glad to hear it, they say. When it burns down to glowing coals, you wet it, and that's your biochar. And that's an amazing, biochar is an amazing kind of penthouse, high rise for everything you want in your soil.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too, though. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that. What is really that importance of that too? This is something that's really kind of, a lot of gardeners are starting to catch on to right now is biochar and how well it can work for your garden soil. So, what is its role in the soil?
I think I said it's like humus on steroids because it stores. It doesn't have nutrients itself, but it makes a place for a lot of things to live. It's incredibly absorbent. So I will put biochar, soak it in some compost tea, and then dig it in. I'm looking at my book because I don't remember there very well.
One thing I'll mention while you're out your own going to yourself for your own wisdom is that biochar can seem like a very mystical process. It can seem like something like arcane or like you need a special equipment. But if you have a backyard fire pit or go to a campfire or something, there is some of the coals that are left, the charcoal is biochar, right? I mean, anything that's burned to ash is biochar. You can just pick it up and put it in your compost pile collect it after the campfire, pick it up. There will always be some that is incompletely burned, and that is what the black sticks that you see the next day.
Exactly. I'm careful about a lot of ash because that is alkaline and has potassium, which might be fine. But yeah, the chunks you can take out that are black. I'm going to read to you about biochar from my book. It increases soil water holding capacity by as much as 20%. It hosts soil microbes, especially fungi, and mycorrhizae especially, which we love. and it stays in soil kind of forever. They have found in the Amazon old garbage pits, basically, that from tribes that lived there
Yeah.
hundreds of years ago, and they have biochar in it, and it's amazingly fertile soil. They throw in garbage and charcoal, and so it has a lasting effect, and it helps present disease. And I think they don't know exactly why. Yeah, but that research has supported that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in some way too is that, that the world, in a sense, without us, continues to, forests will burn down, and then they'll, replenish the soil with that, I guess it would be the biochar, would be some the magic and what's going on in that sort of process and everything. Mind you, our own human, fires we create and everything aren't as good, aren't as regenerative for the soil and everything, but
Yeah.
I think that's really kind of fascinating how that's kind of the part of the process thing that come down. But as you learn more about biochar, you kind of see how that really kind of works in order to really kind of build up even better soil than and really create a better and more healthier forest, and so in some senses you can see that same sort of thing by adding that into our gardens to kind of create that same sort of that same sort of healthiness to our soil.
Yeah, and my approach is all about mimicking nature.
Right, exactly.
Fires are natural. Another thing I want to say about biochar is that it absorbs water, so you want to have it wet when you dig it into your garden, or water really well at the same time.
Yeah. What about like inoculation? I hear a lot about that too. It's like, isn't there, you need to kind of give it something, a boost, in going into the garden.
Yeah.
Because I think you said you were soaking it in something before, and
in compost tea, or bucket with some fish emulsion or kelp. And compost tea is the best. And if your soil's pretty alive and fertile to start with, it'll become inhabited by what's in your soil, but it gives it a boost to soak it in something fertile first.
Or some people suggest like mixing it into your compost pile as you're making compost.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I do that too. Yeah.
I became a huge believer in biochar when I added it. I garden up at the Noble Rot, which is a wine bar in Portland, and on the roof. And we started that with we took over some soil, some sections that were destined to be a green roof with succulents. And that soil mix is very lightweight and very poor. It doesn't have to be very nutritious. Succulents don't take much from the soil. And so we took that over and put it to vegetables. And for the first few years, it really did terribly. It was very inconsistent, and it was very tough to get certain crops to grow well there at all. And then about 5 years in, I added biochar to it, and it has just been performing spectacularly.
Cool.
That was a really dramatic line between pre-biochar and post-biochar.
Yeah, unsolicited testimonial.
Yeah.
And somebody just wrote that
I'm a believer.
Yeah. Someone just wrote that they added it to part of their garden, and broccoli did better than ever before, I guess. But it's amazing stuff.
Yeah. Along that line, one thing that I actually, when I was reading the book, I made a little marginal note here. There's a lot of talk, and I don't know if you happen to know this, or maybe our readers know it, but there's a lot of talk of the cation exchange capacity, the CEC and the cations.
You're heading right where I was heading too.
Yeah.
Please don't ask me to remember that. But.
Well, so, so you mentioned you have what is a section called "What is CEC?" and talk about the soil cations, the positive charged ones, calcium, magnesium, sodium, et cetera. But then there's also negative charged ions that plants need. Those are called anions. But I have never heard about the anion exchange capacity. So what about the AEC? Does it exist? Are anions exchanged in the same way? So what about that?
I think you might have me stumped.
Yeah,
I think I knew that when I was reading about it, but this is some pretty dense stuff.
Yeah, this was a big part of the book that I was really learning some new stuff too there as well.
I think this is true, that the cation exchange capacity, part of that is exchanging cations for anions. So they swap out.
Maybe that goes on.
Yeah, they're they're at the party.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just I'm going to dive in further to try to find out more for myself, because that was one area where it's just like, oh, I mean, that's just what learning is about, right? We encounter these materials and it's just like, oh, well, all right, I don't. What about that? Not covered, but it occurs to me. So let's try to. I'm trying to find it. Try to find the answer.
Yeah. So what cations exchange with is anions. Yeah.
Yeah. So also too, you know, as we move further down the book and all of that, we've kind of touched on it just a little bit as well too, is, you know, the big thing for me in learning throughout the process of gardening from earlier on to more of what I do today, you know, one of the biggest and more important parts of this is compost, you know, and, having compost. We kind of touched a little bit on in the garden segment about our container compost bins that we got. I've got a couple of other more
black soldier flies. I love them.
Yep, I got my cold compost. I've got, you know, so I've got a couple of different types of compost and all of that, but maybe you can kind of talk about the importance of this, you know, in the long run. What we're doing is we're just kind of breaking down and kind of working to break down this organic matter in larger amounts versus, you know, something that you touch on also as well through the earlier part of the book too, is, you know, just kind of cut and drop, you know, in place, that sort of thing. So you're just kind of letting things cut and drop, which is good. But composting, we're just kind of taking, instead of dropping it, we're just kind of putting in a nice big old pile and we're letting it do certain things. But what's kind of important about that process there too, you know, and allowing and in breaking those sort of things down in the way of, you know, setting up a compost pile or something.
Yeah, I'm a fairly lazy composter unless I'm really.
Me too. That's why I mentioned I got the cold compost bin. I have not done hot composting yet myself because I think of the work that goes into it.
Yeah.
But
I have done it in the past. It was gratifying to see steam come off when you turn it, but I don't think it's necessary because I am not afraid of weed seeds and diseases, because mulching and minimal weed pulling when things go to seed keeps weeds down in the garden. And I think the best way to deal with or prevent disease is diversity. So I just put more stuff in. I put everything in. I put in diseased branches. Oh, I'm glad they're learning something new. I love these comments. I'll pause and look at them. Basically, you want a mix of dry things and green things, brown things and green things, and or woody things. I consider brown, not as hot. So I keep a bale of straw near my compost pile. So if I have too much kitchen stuff in there, I add some straw so it's aerated and doesn't get too funky.
Yeah, it is good to have that balance between your greens and browns, right?
Right. And I also have my leaves in a circle of fence wire turning into leaf mold. And I can grab some off the top of that if I need more browns. But you want to layer about 1 to 3. 1 part green stuff, hot stuff, like grass clippings or vegetables from the kitchen, and 3 parts brown stuff. Just for variety in the texture, so it doesn't turn into a big glop of rotten vegetables that stinks, and that stink. What causes that stink is not good for the compost. It creates alcohol and anaerobic microbes that aren't good for your garden.
Mm.
If you get that, you can fix it by, the cure is always turn it and correct the moisture. So if it's too wet, add brown stuff, dry stuff. Can be newspapers too. I put my shredded mail in it. Because I don't worry about chemicals in that, because fungi especially remediate things, poisons.
Right.
And Paul Stamets talked about 3 piles of 3 slag heaps, asphalt and oil.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried planting seeds on it. They left one alone, and they put oyster mushroom spawn in one, and that one went, grew into a bunch of mushrooms, and then sprouts of seeds. So nature also remediates stuff.
Yeah.
We should stop.
Yeah, so when we're dealing with certain things like that do have or could be in soil from previous, before we got there or something like that, just kind of, again, coming back to building up with soil matter or good organic soil matter and all that sort of stuff will help, again, come back to that idea of creating a new balance in your soil and can kind of, like you said, remediate some of those issues that you have.
Yeah, and heal
it. Yeah, that's a good word.
Wrongs we've done. So if you want to start a compost pile, I use a rectangle. I have a spot for the current pile and a spot for new stuff. Start with a layer of straw or leaves or whatever you have. Throw kitchen waste. If you have a bunch of stuff you pruned, you can chop that up in there. If you have too many tomato plants to chop up in place, you can chop those into there with your trusted machete. And then when you have enough of a layer of green stuff that you can't see the brown stuff, then put another layer of brown stuff that's about 2 or 3 times as thick on. And if you're gung-ho and you want compost in a couple weeks, turn it every day. I also have a hose with a nozzle next to it, so if it seems too dry, water it. If it's too wet, add more brown stuff. I live in co-housing, and I'm the compost goddess of the neighborhood. I repair the compost pile.
I'm sure.
What a great role to have.
Yeah, I like it. I like being worshipped. And if you don't turn it, you can always come back and fix it and turn it into healthy compost. Yes, you can compost your bills, Valerie.
That's right. I love that one. That's good.
Yeah. So I leave it for months at a time if I'm not doing much in the garden, and then go back and turn it, see what's in there. There's always some finished compost at the very bottom. My friend has parrot, and soiled paper is a great year-round additive. Yeah. Toilet paper rolls. Yeah. Chopped leaves. If you have chickens, of course, that's great. Or if you can get manure, that's good for your garden. They have chickens in co-housing, and I get that sometimes. So come back to it, have some dry stuff, have your hose, and turn it. Usually what I see in troubled compost is either it's just a pile of dry, dead stuff that hasn't been wet. If you do have a pile of brush or wood chips and you wet it, then it will heat up and compost, especially if you add nitrogen to that, which you can add in the form of soy meal or alfalfa pellets for feed that's high in nitrogen, or grass clippings if you have grass. And the other thing I see is somebody's just been dumping all their vegetable peels in there, and it's a stinky, rotten mess.
Right.
And you know, 2 or 3 times of turning that and mixing in dry stuff, it'll start to smell better, smell like dirt and not something rotten, and look more like compost. And if you scrape off the top of a compost pile that's in progress, there's always something at the bottom. If it's been there a while, that's finished compost. So I do that when I'm switching to a different pile, and scrape some out, and there's worms and rich humus down there.
Yeah. Real quick, fun question from our facilitator, Jay, is I do wonder what your compost queen's crown would resemble.
I'm trying to
grasses
keep this
and
straight.
flowers and
Well, clearly.
I'm a compost goddess, not a queen. Try to keep it straight.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, there we go.
The leaves of flowers would be good.
So Diane, I have a big picture question for you. Well, you know, one of the quotes that and I've actually used this quote with my students, the FDR quote, "The nation that destroys its soil destroys its." Aside from any other political reflections on our nation, which we won't go into at this time.
Thank you.
How do you feel like we're doing as a nation with respect to our soil?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I hear more and more about commercial farmers using these techniques, and you know, there are conferences or documentaries about it, and that it can work. It's a learning curve, and it's a huge leap of faith. But there are people who use, you know, tractors and big equipment that are doing this. One thing I hear about is slicing rather than turning the soil, which is a way to loosen it up. At home, you can do that by putting in a spading fork and just lifting it, but not turning it over. So you're not killing a bunch of stuff, but you're loosening up the soil to make it easier to work.
Maybe like I've seen broad fork type of things.
Right.
As well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a bigger scale. I don't need that at my house, but yeah. And I don't know if there will be government incentives given but
right.
Not going to go there.
I'll just have a good laugh at that one right now.
Yeah.
It might have to come from us, right? I think it's going to come from the gardeners.
And
yeah,
and that's kind of what I was going to say too, is that I think in that sort of sense is that it's more of on us and folks like yourself, Diane, who are putting out this sort of great information and all of that too, as well, to start really reconnecting with what our role is with caring for the soil and taking care of those sort of things as well too. I hope in the sense that too, some of this is also being reflected in the larger scale as well too, with, more, from market gardeners who I think are really in on this sort of stuff as well. But from that on to our larger scale farm systems as well too, that provide the bulk of our food that we get in the nation as well. So hopefully there's this kind of like, from the bottom up kind of relearning of this process, right?
Has to start organically, pardon the pun, but
yeah.
It's true. Yeah. And a demand for organic food is really helping.
I think that's the gift of a book like this. It's like putting it out there in such a wonderfully accessible form. Each of us does our own thing, and we're trying to make a difference in our own yards, gardens, community gardens, all the public spaces where we might grow. But that's pretty limited. But when you launch something like this, it all of a sudden puts into many people's hands the awareness. It's like people might not have ever thought of themselves as a facilitator of the process, and the plants and the microbes are actually doing it, and you just have to let them do it. You don't have to be the hero who steps in and manipulates the earth and tills it all up and balances the pH and all. The systems know how to do this stuff.
We don't have to be the boss.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think we're so being the boss, and even as gardeners, I think we've internalized that message in the States or in the modern world. Like, we're the boss of natural systems. It's like, no, let's try to work in partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, and it worked for a while. You know, that's why fertilizers became so widespread. Is because they
Yeah.
made a big difference the first time you used them, and then the soil became depleted and got more diseases and more weeds. Needed more Roundup. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, maybe we can reverse that cycle.
Mm.
I think Kristen Bell wrote a book called The Soil Will Save Us, which I also recommend. She
Okay.
talks a lot about practices that sequester carbon. And this is a part of all that, you know, saving the planet.
I do like how you bring to the fore that the soil is the third largest carbon sink
Right.
in
Yeah.
fossil fuels. That, you know, it's like we have a role in sequestering carbon. We are all making a difference in terms of our healthy garden practices and carbon and climate issues.
Yeah. Planting trees also.
Mm.
Yeah. So, also, we talked about compost and all of that there as well, but you can take your compost and kind of take it to a whole nother level too. And I think we'll touch on this as well when in my next question. But what are some good methods for making compost tea? Compost tea. I mean, I think that, like I said, is a way to take that compost to a whole nother level. And really,
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked. I have a 5-gallon bucket, an aquarium pump, length about 1.5 feet of leaky hose, 1/4-inch leaky hose. Yes, it's a carbon sink. Thank you. I love these comments. And duct tape. That's pretty much all it takes. And if you want, you can put your compost in a mesh bag, but I don't do that. I just pour it through a tea strainer into a spray bottle, a pump sprayer. So remember to first tape down your leaky hose with some duct tape. Otherwise, it floats right to the top when you run air through it. So that's the first thing. Tape it down. Attach it with drip irrigation bar connectors to the aquarium hose. I like one that has 2 tubes coming out, the aquarium pump. Attach that to the 2 ends of your leaky hose and tape it in 2 places into kind of a coil at the bottom of the bucket, because aeration is important to get the right microbes. Throw in a few handfuls of compost, like a 1/2-gallon milk container-ish.
Yeah.
And fill it maybe 5 or 6 inches from the top, because it foams up as it grows more organisms.
The foam is good.
Yeah, the foam is good. Plug in the aquarium pump, and I have done this inside. I'll probably start a batch now and keep it in a corner of the pantry, because it needs to be fairly warm to have much life in. Out of the sun is ideal, and bubble it for about 2 days. If you let it go too long, it gets too many microbes, I guess, and starts to smell bad. It should smell like a lake, the good smell of a lake, and have kind of brown foam on it, and that's ideal. And then if you have it in a mesh bag, you just pull out the compost and put that in a watering can or a garden sprayer if it's fine mesh. I have a kitchen bowl with a spout on it. I scoop some out. I have an old tea strainer I put on top of my garden sprayer.
Yeah.
And pour it from the spout through that. And you can even dilute it if you want to spread the goodness farther.
Right.
And if I have plants that are not looking healthy or have diseases, I'll use it pretty full strength and spray on those.
Yeah.
If I'm just
straight on them too, foliar feed them, right, as well, right? Yep.
Yeah, because plants also have a microbiome on their surfaces, like we do on our skin, that ideally keeps the bad germs from taking hold. So
Yeah.
you're giving them a better, more diverse microbiome. Sorry.
No problem. But taking this just a little bit deeper though, too. Again, we talked about this just a little bit before we got on in the garden segment about our worm bins and keeping worms. For basically growing our own vermicompost. These worm castings and everything too. So that's one of the things I've been doing throughout this last year. I'm going to try to do some more videos on this as we move into next year and all of that. But that was my main fertilizer for this whole last year.
Wow.
I've used mostly like some dry organic fertilizers throughout the years and everything. But my mission this last year was like, well, let's see if we can make how well we'll do if we're just using this. And so on the same sort of bit, you're talking about, you get like a little mesh bag or something to put your compost in, and you do that. But you can also take this vermicompost, the worm castings,
Right.
in place of the compost and make your own worm teas as well that work great as fertilizers too, right?
Yeah, that's great stuff. I wrote with great authority in my book about worm compost, but I'm not very good at it. So
Right.
worm bins, because I neglect them. But
Right.
yeah, I'm inspired. A friend of mine has one that's doing really well, so I'm gonna have another go at it. But yeah, you want to talk about how you do your worm bin?
Yeah, I just got a basic, like storage bin type of worm bins, and yeah, just nice, good size ones. And again, as we talked about before, I love the idea that it's just really that initial investment, the bin, the worms, and then a lot of that other stuff you can find around the house. You got a lot of the browns, because worms are really going to want a lot of that cellulose and everything too.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of the browns that you're getting in there, and mix it up with some, mix it up with a little bit of like cocoa coir and stuff, to kind of create a nice little bedding for them and everything. And then after that, it's just your food scraps, whatever your green scraps are and everything that you got from the kitchen and everything, and just kind of feeding them every now and then.
Tear up some newspapers.
Yeah.
Cocoa coir is amazing stuff. It's a little brick and it expands to a 5-gallon bucket almost. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Maybe throw in a little bit of coffee grounds if you're a coffee drinker or something, those sort of things. The worms really love that sort of stuff. And in my sense of what I've learned this last year, though, too, it's really you just got to watch your moisture levels, really. And it's kind of the same thing you're talking about with the regular compost pile as well, too. Just too wet, creates a bad situation. Worms will start fleeing your bins if that sort of thing happens, and all of that sort of stuff too. So my bin has holes across the bottom, and I kind of have them setting up on a couple of wood so that I can see that if it's dripping at all, then I know my bin's too wet. And I need to get in there and do similar to what you're doing with the compost pile. I need to add a little bit more browns to this sort of thing and kind of absorb some of that wetness up a little bit too, in order to kind of create a good or keep a good, healthy system for them and all. But again, too, I think that's just really the value of this is just something we can do easily at home with an initial investment. If we're willing enough to make and maintain it, and everything. And then it's, something we can do indoors. We've been talking earlier as well too about how we're getting our indoor stuff going, microgreens, we're planting for plants and all that sort of stuff. It's just another thing we can do indoors to kind of, help supplement the sort of things that we're doing for our garden spaces. And it makes, again, some of the best fertilizer out there for sure.
And Enoch, your results comparable in terms of the things you grew using mainly the worm castings and the tea?
Oh, absolutely. And I think really where I saw the best was like in my peppers. I'm a big pepper grower. I love growing a lot of peppers, and I grow them in containers. I got a lot. I'm a small space gardener, so I've got a lot of containers. We use these earth buckets, and the peppers I did, the plants just seemed to do much better than what I'd seen in the last couple of years, at least. Having utilized this is just, the only fertilizer I use. And again, too, not just into the soil directly, but also, you know, drenching the plants and foliar feeding as well. I just think it's
Yeah,
great. And again, too, where we don't need all of this other stuff, you know, we can just find this
right.
stuff and create this stuff right in our own homes.
And you don't even have to buy worms. My grandfather used to dump coffee grounds in one spot in the garden to grow worms for fishing.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
just dig in there and it'd be full of red wigglers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. My cold compost pile does that basically.
yeah,
Just tons
right.
and tons of nice worms up in there.
Yeah. Wow. Diane, I've got a last question for you. Just tell us about puttering as a garden philosophy. Tell us a little bit about that, because you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I love puttering, and I do more puttering than working. I love to walk around and see what everything's doing. There's a saying that the best fertilizer is the steps of the gardener, because
Uh-huh.
you're out there seeing things, as long as you're not walking where you plant. So
Yeah.
I'm very firm on paths and don't walk where you have plants. And if there's something to eat, I pick it, or flowers. I grow a lot of flowers too. And if something's ugly, I cut it off and spread it around.
Yeah.
When you cut dead stuff off, it's important to scatter it for aesthetic, so you don't have a big pile of one kind of leaf there. If you scatter it, it looks like mulch. Dead leaves I cut off. I think people worry about permaculture not being attractive, and it absolutely can be if you just go out there and
yeah, you had a chapter in there, how not to make your gardeners hate you.
Your neighbors hate you. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. I have daffodils, and when the blossoms are brown, I just yank them off and scatter them around, and they look nice again.
Yeah.
Kind of also look at if anything needs some love. If you notice if something's not getting enough water, or if there's any disease happening. I had a spider mite infestation. It took me a while to figure out. Some things weren't blooming, and just being out puttering is fun, and you're a lot more in tune with your garden and aware of what's happening, what it needs. And for aesthetics, cut off dead leaves, scatter them around, prune. If something's too crowded, I prune. I have a holster with pruning shears in it that I wear almost every time I leave the house, so I can steal cuttings from the neighbors and stuff. Or prune something that's in my way.
Yeah.
Oh, zero worms, seeing more every year. Arborist chips were the key. Yeah. I also am well known to the tree people around here, and I piles of wood chips.
Yeah, for sure.
And wood chips are great for paths. They're permeable and they look nice, so they'll keep your garden looking nice. I also do borders with like chard, and I have kind of skinny strips of garden because I'm on a sloped lot. So I plant chard and nasturtiums and kale kind of in a row as a border. So it looks pretty. You can combine beauty and
some nice colorful chard for sure, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, we got a request here. Show us the dog. I showed everybody. I was on a garden party podcast, and my cat was rolling around, so I got to show everybody my cat the other day. It was great.
This is Peaches. He's a boy. His name's Peaches. We got him on impeachment day.
Oh my!
Oh, right on. I love it. That's great.
And yeah, he's hilarious. He's the happiest animal I've ever had. He levitates when we're going to go on a walk and choose, and we'll jump on the table and eat our dinner and have no remorse. So.
Right on. Well, as everybody knows, I like to do a little bit of a reading from the book, something that kind of stands out to me and everything. And I thought this little segment that you'd put in here, beauty, magic, and tomatoes, but it's a he says making magic. Gardening is the closest thing to make. All right, let me start over. I'm sorry here. I'm stumbling over my own tongue. Making magic. Gardening is the closest thing to magic I know. Well, that and babies. Where do
Mm,
they come from? I know, I know. I've read the literature. The literature, however, doesn't explain how an invisible glob of protoplasm turns into a thinking, reasoning human being with its own spirit and personality,
mm,
or how a seed knows how to grow. Consider the miracle of seeds. Somehow, using nothing but dirt, air, and water, each seed turns into a plant like the one it came from. Explain that. Seeds contain within them a remarkable intelligence. Plants are born knowing stuff. How many hours of daylight are needed before they sprout? How warm should it be? How can roots attract the food they need? Which way to grow to absorb more sun? When to start blooming, when to drop seeds so they'll have a shot at sprouting next year, and when to drop leaves, blanketing the soil they're growing in to shelter it for the coming winter. Plants know all of this and more. Seeds come with an internal calendar, timer, thermometer, altimeter, light and moisture sensors, and solar energy locator, not to mention a blueprint for how to make a plant that makes more seeds. And soil knows how to nourish those seeds with exactly what they need, given enough raw materials. When I
mm.
have my priorities straight, this fills me with wonder.
Wow.
Right? Right? Isn't that great?
Thank you.
Coming from just again too, just a really great book here, Grow Your Soil by Diane Miessler. Diane, it's just been so wonderful to have you here today to talk all about this really great book that you put out. I highly recommend this to anybody who's just kind of getting ready to dip their toes into some soil science and to figure out, what's really essential for your garden, and to really kind of figure out some of those concepts that it takes to really put together the type of soil food web that's necessary to really, as you say on the cover there, create your best garden ever. Thanks again, Diane.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
think
It's
it's just
really
a
fun talking to you.
shift. You've gotten us into a whole different way of being as a gardener. So thank you for the thanks for the proddings and the humor and the metaphors and all of it.
Thank you so much.
You
Fun
got it.
talking to you guys.
Great
Yeah,
conversation.
Thank you for all your comments, listeners. I hope I got them all.
yeah. Lots of great comments, lots of great conversation going on there. Actually, you know what? Real quick, before I do let you go, if I'm remembering, I almost forgot. We did have one question I wanted to get to after
Okay.
the conversation, and
Uh-huh.
we'll just kind of end with this one last question here. We had a question earlier. It says, if a gardener wants to write a book, what are the first steps they should take?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say be passionate about something that hasn't been written about a lot,
Mm,
or
Hmm.
an aspect of that. Um, yeah, write about something you love,
Yeah,
and maybe if you feel like you're a good writer, go for it. If you are not sure about that, get a friend who's a good writer or an editor to look at it as you go.
yeah.
mm.
Yeah, that, and I would say also too, in reading this book too, is also kind of let yourself in your own personality come alive through your writing as
Yeah,
well
do it in
too,
your own
because
voice.
you've shown us a little bit of humor throughout the interview, and I know this book is packed with some really good fun stuff in there as well too. So that would be one of the other things I would say to add to that as well.
Yeah, write as yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, right on, Diane. Again, it was just really awesome to spend this time with you today on Sunday. Thank you so much for joining with us on our show. Such a wonderful book. And yeah, you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me. This was fun. Gave me a shot in the arm.
Absolutely right. Let's look forward to the next book, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I need an idea.
There you go. Right. Well,
Uh,
you betcha. Well, thanks again, Diane. We'll talk to you later.
Bye bye, Radio Land or Television Land.
Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Oh, here we are. Oh, there he is. He's coming back. He's coming back. All right, on.
for a second, I was like, I could still hear Charles's voice, so I knew I was good, except on this sound.
I know. Try to get something quick done right in the break, right?
Bathroom run, dude. Bathroom run.
That's right. Right on. Excellent, man. What a great book for us to finish up the 2024 book club year for us, right?
You know, this is just like there's gardening books that kind of talk about small details and things that are a little on the surface or maybe a little bit new techniques, but this is like foundational. I mean, this is like, you cannot, if you want to be a gardener, you must interact with soil. You must understand it. If you want to be a good gardener, you must understand this stuff, and this is no way around it.
Yeah, exactly. And really, you know, it was a huge thing for me, like I was kind of mentioning before, was just kind of moving from really conventional gardening knowledge that, people, have and all of that, to just really understanding again to more how really simple gardening is once we learn and understand some of these concepts. And I think the soil food web stuff that's really become more and more popular over these years now is just huge. And again too, it's really just nature doing and running its own course.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of helping facilitate that.
And as the garden, this book really gave me some real personal challenges, because I've always believed in no-till gardening and I practiced it to a certain degree, but I still have enjoyed tilling. I still do like that look of a tilled row. And
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. This is further push to get away from that, and really just try to fully embrace that cover croppy, mulchy approach with just some little bit of soil disturbance here and there, but not just keep putting that tiller away. I just have a little small one of those little electric mantis tillers, which I really love, but still be like, I'm gonna keep that on the shelf this year.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is I've kind of learned too, is, it's a, no-till is, really great, but, again too, and for newer gardeners, I would always recommend that, you got to think about your space and the soil as it is that you've come to, you're seeing, as it is. Maybe it's been walked on all the time and all that, and it's very compacted and all of that. So there's a certain sense of maybe, getting things loosened up, getting things started, and getting all this stuff going, and knowing and understanding a lot of these concepts about the soil food web through this book. Then we got a good idea of what we're looking to get to. So maybe at first we've got to till it up. Maybe at first we've got to really open up that soil. You know what I mean? To just get things started again. And then once we get that, going and get that started, then it's just the maintenance after that, and no need to really go in there anymore. I think the idea of no-tilling is just something that, we should stay away from in a repeated manner.
Yes. Yeah. But it's there are I got to say things like, if you're sowing like on a commercial scale, a bunch of
Yeah.
carrots, even a large, small seeded stuff, no-till is a challenge. I got to say, you know, I mean, just
Yeah.
from the perspective of the reality of it is like, if you till up a bed, then rake it clean of debris, it is so easy to plant the small seeded stuff. So it's just, you have to just come up with methods. You know, one that I like is putting finished compost on top of mulch, and then I can seed my fine seeded stuff in that. So it's, you know, we just have to be creative. We have to experiment and never lose that sense of, it's just like the no-till is the vision. It's the idea. And I'm going to see how practically I can, you know, how I can get there with the things that I want to grow. So it's always it's just a dialogue between yourself, the things you're trying to grow, and the soil and the conditions. So I think that's good to remember as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, too, also just another big, great recommendation for all of you gardeners out there to get yourself a copy of this just really great book. And again, too, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
More so, you know, you're going to enjoy reading this book, and then you're going to come away with a lot of really great knowledge about how to really kind of, again, you know, facilitate and care for and be just more of a caretaker of your soil, and making sure, again, you're optimizing your garden output, you know, by letting a lot of nature do what it, you know, really wants to do.
You know, I will say this, Enoch, it's because of the chunky nature of it. It would make great bathroom reading. Now, I'm not saying that I read it in the bathroom, but it would make great just thing to have there in your bathroom. You pick it up,
Right.
You could just be meditating on your soil, you know, while you're creating soil, so to speak.
Right on, right on. Okay, so as everybody knows here, we've finished up our interview and our discussion about Grow Your Soil, our great book that we had here for our December gardening book club, monthly gardening book club. And what we do here at the end of every gardening book club is we look forward to what we're going to be doing. We're going to be right into a whole new year. So yeah, all right. Let's see here. Reveal our new book for January.
Okay, so we got Botanic Gardens
what is it?
of the World. Look at that, dude! Botanic Gardens of the World.
Oh man, I'm still waiting for my copy. So you'll have to tell me a little bit what you're already seeing out of this book so far.
Okay, this book, I tell you, this book called to me from like 10 feet away at my local nursery. And I saw it from across the space, and I was just like immediately drawn to it. I was like, I must get this book. There's no way. And then as soon as I opened like any of the pages, this is like 50, I can't remember how many incredible botanic gardens the author goes to across the world, with just absolutely stunning pictures. I'm just, it was like, okay, yep, I'm putting down, I don't even care how much money this is. I'm putting down whatever amount that is. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be inspiring. I'm doing it.
Exactly.
So,
Me too. So yeah, I got mine coming. I can't wait for it to arrive. But what a good way or a fun way to kind of kick off the 2025 year by taking a trip around the world, right?
And you know, it reminds me a little bit of you know, one of the books we did, Karen Hugh's book,
Leave Your Troubles Behind.
Thank you. The one about happiness and plants. One of the things she suggested in there is go visit botanical gardens. You know, it's a great, I mean, you can imagine the amount of care. Some of these have been maintained for centuries. So they have this huge historical element. They have maybe a cultural or regional element. I know I've been to some, you know, like I've been to the Huntington Botanical Garden. I had a chance to go there. I went to one, and that's in this book. I actually went to one in Calcutta, India, which was really inspiring. And these are amazing collections of plants. I mean, this is just like constant gardening concentrated. It's just, I can't wait to get into this book and, you know, hear from the author, because she obviously visited all these places. This has got to be amazing.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. And again, that's going to be, let me double check here real quick. Third Sunday of January will be January 19th. So January 19th, we're going to be talking with, let me get this
Yep.
out of the way real quick here. We talk with Deborah Trentham. She's the author of Botanic Gardens of the World. So really looking forward to this January 19th. Right on. That's going to be great. I can't wait.
You know, today we were really had our hands in the dirt, so to speak, like right in the real basic stuff of gardening. But this is going to be a really cool 30,000 feet up, you know, looking at really large traditions, these really incredible collections, and getting inspiration maybe on the design side too, you know, like how plants fit together. It's not just going to be about growing broccoli. It's going to be about all these amazing plants, Amazon water lilies, these really just incredible things on our planet that have been collected into these amazing tableaus, these artistic masterpieces. So I guess I can't stop talking about this book, but I guess we're going to have to.
No, it's gonna be great. I get it too. I can't wait to get my copy, start digging into it, and getting ready for that. What again would be such a really great conversation to have with Deborah about this. Just you know, again too, you know, I can't wait to kind of talk to her about what it took to do the research for this book. You know what I mean? To be able to, you know, go and visit these places and do the sort of things that she's done in order to create it. There's going to be a lot to look at, you know, when it comes to this new book. And again, like you said, I like that viewpoint, you know, big, you know, from way up, you know, we're going to look at, you know, looking down on all of this stuff, you know, and take a larger look at gardening and plants and all of that sort of stuff just to get our 2025 year started.
And, you know, shout out to you, Enoch, because, you know, this book might have hit me from across the nursery, but then you had to go reach out to Deborah and you had to do all the legwork, and you've done all the legwork to get these amazing authors here with us, which I think is just, it's a head and shoulders above just some other kind of book group. I mean, we could just be reading books and discussing them because they're cool, but to have each time just makes all the difference to actually hear from Diane Miessler today, to hear from all these incredible people that we've heard from, and then to have to look forward to another year of that is just amazing. So I really appreciate all the work you do to make that happen.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that compliment. You know, again, too, that's one of the great things about the, you know, this Let's Get Growing show is the ability to talk to all of these gardeners, have these sort of conversations with the people themselves, you know, to really get that further insight into their gardening practices and all of that. And then taking that and extending it just further to make an even you know, greater, bigger type of book club than what you would normally get to be involved with, you know, by having the authors here with us to be able to discuss their books and, you know, and all of these other types of insights that we can get from it, from, you know, from them, not just ourselves and what we've read.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm keeping these books all on a section of my shelf, and I'm going back to them. You know, I just had Tony was on the program today, but I was just referencing his book last week. And I'm just constantly grabbing these books. It's like, oh yeah, I remember something that somebody said over here, and I'm looking at the book, and it's just great. We're not picking any losers, folks. We're picking only winners. And this is only going to be stuff that's going to keep helping you in your garden practice.
Yeah, and it's going to be more and more and more because we got plans to keep this rolling all the way through next year. I've got my own bookshelf just for these books as well too. So, you know, I can't wait to see that bookshelf just fill up even more and more and more, because the more that bookshelf fills up, the more knowledge that we're getting out there, especially directly from these gardeners and authors who put these books together and everything too. So that means that more and more you all out there are getting to learn and getting to understand about from all of these different books. So again, just really great. I'm glad we thought of this for this last year and put it together and all of that. It's just been really awesome. And I just can't wait for us to get started next year. I think that's one of the reasons why I was saying last year we took a big chunk of a break for winter. You know, it took a good couple of months off and everything, but man, I've been so excited about what we've accomplished this year and all the different conversations we've had. I only set up for just a holiday break this time. Yeah. We're only taking a couple of weeks, and then we're gonna be right back at this, you know, right into the new year, and then we're gonna get going and, you know, as we say, let's get growing into 2025.
So, I think between January reading this book and February going to the garden show, I mean, we're going to be like crazy for gardening by mid-Feb. By the time we come out of that garden show, between like this and that, we're going to be like totally freaking nuts if we already aren't. So
I know. Again, too, this we've had that whole gardening year that as it is, and gardeners who've done do this year after year know this. You know what I mean? We kind of wind down from one year a little bit, but that winding down is almost like a coil in a way. It's it's kind of like a tightening up, right? As we get into winter, it just kind of tightens up, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're that excitement just reinvigorates, just explodes into our new season and all of that. And for a lot of us gardeners, it's just right as we get into the new year, we're ready to get going for that next growing season.
Yep. So next month we're tightening the coil just a little bit tighter.
That's right. I look forward to it, man. I look forward to seeing you again live. And it's been just so awesome having you as a live co-host for this. Most of the time I'm here just myself doing all of that sort of stuff. So it's really awesome to be able to kind of work back and forth with you to really enhance the conversation and really be able to dig in, like I say, a little bit deeper into what we're talking about. And having you as a co-host has just been really wonderful this year. I've been really thank you for you taking your time to be a part of this really great thing as well too.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't miss it, Nick. It's so much fun doing it with you. So I'm looking forward to even more of the same. Let's make it a great year in 2025.
That's right, for sure. Well, all right, Mark, I'll catch you here in a few minutes, but let's get this thing wind down so that we can get to the end of our growing season here on the Let's Get Growing show, and then we'll be geared up. Like you said, we'll get wound right up for a whole new 2025.
Hey, best wishes to everybody for the holiday season, whatever you're celebrating, and to a happy and prosperous 2025. We'll see you around the bend next year. Take care.
Excellent. Right on, everybody. There we go. One last monthly gardening book club in the books here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, too, like I said, it's just so awesome to be able to do this sort of thing, not just with my good friend Mark there and having these authors live with us on the show, but also having all of you as well too, who've been just so awesome, really keeping the conversation going throughout the show in the chat and participating in our conversation. I just really appreciate you guys so much for joining in with us here and just really making this show just really awesome. I look forward to this so much every single weekend, to be able to get together with all of you and to have these just awesome conversations. And so, like I said, I am really excited about what we've got going on for this next year as well too. So like I said too earlier in the show, as we were getting started, we will be taking the next couple of weeks off. This is the last show for 2024. The next couple of weeks are our holiday weekends. I'll be out and about doing things with family and all that sort of stuff. But I did set up shows. Basically, if you go to our YouTube page or our live page there on YouTube, you'll see that we've got shows that are set up. And I set those up just because I know a lot of you come here week after week and you really enjoy the conversation with each other. So that's just basically an opportunity through the holidays on the time that we're usually here on the weekend, every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, where you can get together and jump in and say hi if you'd like to. I'll jump in each and every weekend wherever I'm at and maybe say hi or maybe chat a little bit with everybody as well too. And then what we'll do, like I said, we'll get right back at it here when we get started with the new year. And so that will be January 4th, first weekend of January. We'll be right back at it with our Saturday show. And on our Saturday show, we're going to have with us Kyle Haggerty from the Urban Farmstead. I've been following Kyle for many years now. He's got really great garden space, actually just south of me. We missed an opportunity to get together when I was doing some visit videos. He lives just south of me in Sacramento, California there. So it's gonna be really great to finally get together with Kyle, be able to talk all about his garden, there at the Urban Farmstead. And then I'm really excited about getting started again too with our Sunday edition of the show. This has been such a great addition this year as well, because it allows for us to have have this space on our show to be able to do our monthly garden book, all your questions answered with Gardener Scott. And also we've been doing throughout the year as well too, these gardening roundtables where we can get some guests that we've had on before and get them back on the show and have some really fun discussions with more than one, sort of like what we did today on the book club. We got Mark and the author with us, so we can kind of just have a really great conversation. So our first Sunday live show, January 5th, will be a garden roundtable with Gary Pilarchik from the Rusted Garden and from Callie Kim Gardening. We'll have Callie Kim with us as well too. And these two have actually done a lot of collaborating with each other over the years. I've followed Gary probably since one of those first gardeners that I found, and same with Callie Kim too. They're both really what you would consider OG original gardeners out there on YouTube. And it's going to be really great to have them together and to have a really fun conversation with them. So we're going to jump right into it in 2025. We're going to get the gardening conversation started here on Let's Get Growing right away with these just really awesome, amazing guests, and many, many more to come. Again, like I said, we are here each and every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. So look forward to that. January 4th, January 5th, I expect to see all of you here and to help, have great conversations like we've had all year. And if you are here, as we're ending the show right now, definitely hit that like button, click the subscribe button, also share if you can, and then also be sure to get down in the description below and follow all of our links to our guests and all of the other things that we've got for the Urban Gardener. Let's see here. Let's get a couple of these in here real quick too. So again, thank you, Tony, for being here with us today. Really, really, really awesome to see you in the conversation during our interviews there. It's great to have you here. Jersey Girl, thank you so much again. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And Merry everyone's garden 25 be spectacular. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right on. Thank you so much. Right on, everybody. And again, it's just been so awesome to spend this year with all of you. Like I said, I really look forward to seeing what we get growing on this next year in 2025. And again, I'll see you all January 4th. See you then.